And then let's begin with a word of prayer. Father, when you come to us, you alter the course of our lives. Each of us here has had our lives altered early, and we're appreciative of the fact that we followed you, and our lives have been molded by you. What would have happened to us otherwise, we don't know. We're glad that we followed you. Thank you for coming into our lives, and stay with us, as we know you will. We appreciate your staying with us, as we then go to the conclusion of our lives. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. The Christ appears to Saul. Good. I think Corinthians ought to be right there.
I'll do Corinthians.
Thank you very much.
I'll do the first Acts.
First Acts, okay.
Well, Acts 9.
9 and Acts 22.
Okay, well, I'll get Acts 22,
22.
4 to 11.
All right. Let's set this up. It's late September of 32 AD. And it'll be on the road from Israel to Damascus, from Canaan to Damascus. The last we remember, there was a young man named Stephen who was stoned to death because of a vision he had, and he had a vision at that time. His clothing, the people who were stoning him, was put at the feet of a young man named Saul. I was told that that means that he was the one who was in charge of this. Okay, that he watched over the clothes while everybody else does the stoning. But he's the responsible one. And this is the Saul we're now going to follow. In the spring of 32 AD, the Hellenistic followers of the Way left the Jerusalem area and moved throughout Judea, Samaria, and the Decapolis. Okay? Let me point this out for you. Samaria is here, Judea is here, and the Decapolis is over here. So they were in this whole area, they spread out, trying to stay close to the homeland. Okay? They're still Jews. They still want to be involved with the temple and follow traditions, but there's persecution. So they're scattering out through this whole region here. Any questions? And elsewhere. And they were pursued in those places by representatives of the religious authorities in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is right here, right off the Dead Sea. This sect must be stopped. So they're pursuing them. Any questions, thoughts, or comments? Acts 22, 4 through 5.
Okay. I persecuted this way up to the point of death by binding both men and women and putting them in prison. As the high priest and the whole council of elders can testify about me, from them I also received letters to the brothers in Damascus, and I went there in order to bind those who were there and to bring them back to Jerusalem for punishment.
Okay, this is the comments made by Saul himself. This is what he wrote about this, as reported in Acts. Okay, but this is his own comments as to what happened. Okay, what happened? What was he up to? What's the whole deal here?
Well, he's taking it upon himself to be a mover and shaker in getting rid of these folks.
Okay. Is he enthusiastic?
Absolutely.
Is he evil?
No, not in his own mind.
I would say he probably thought he was doing what was right.
Absolutely.
Correct. Okay, and I really want to emphasize that. He was enthusiastic for God, as he understood it.
Well, and we know his history of study and becoming a Pharisee and all of that. And by knowing that history, you know that he had to be dedicated to it to stick with it that long.
Yes, and he was dedicated to the traditions of the Hebrew religion. Okay, anything else you see? So I just want you to understand his perspective on this one. He felt he was doing God's will, okay, in protecting the religion. What else do you see here?
Well, he received letters authorizing him to take this action, which means it was supported by the religious elite.
Good, that's correct. He got letters because there's a reason. You can't just take someone's word for it necessarily. It's doing what he's doing. They need letters of evidence. This is the officials saying this person has the authority to do these things. So there's some reason for that. We'll get into that. Okay? Both men and women. And what does that mean? Come on.
Well,
it's obvious.
So men and women were not treated the same in those days.
Good.
So by specifying men and women, he would be telling you he was chasing everybody.
Both of them.
Yeah.
And when you pursue women,
You have children.
you get children.
So these would be families, probably.
Right, and anybody else. But that also means that they didn't mention children here, but children are also impacted by this. And I don't know what, I don't think he puts them in prison. He just turns them over to anybody who'll take them, maybe. I really don't know.
Well, but in those days, if you lost your parents, that was a pretty,
You're
they
on the
didn't have
streets.
programs to take care of you, so to speak.
Really.
Grandma, neighbor,
And
who
yeah,
knows?
if they weren't picked up too,
Yeah.
because of being in the way. But probably they were good traditional Jews that took the kids in. They didn't like the parents anyway.
Well, if it's,
or at least the in-laws.
if it's they're taking him to put in prison, probably the children went with them.
May well be, especially any older children, So anyway, we'll see. I don't know. And the high priest and council can testify. So they're the ones who are authorizing it. What else do you see?
Well, he was even going beyond the bounds of Canaan.
Correct. Even beyond the Decapolis. He's going way up into Syria to a place called Damascus. That's the capital of Syria, even today. Okay? Okay, any question, thought, or comment then, before we move on? Then let's read Luke's version of this in Acts 9, verses 1 and 2.
But Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any belonging to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem.
So it looks as though his summary is very similar to Saul's own testimony. What is this thing, the way?
That was the first way that the new followers...
The way was the first way.
Yes, Jesus said,
How
I
about
am the way, the way.
A description of Christians before they had that name.
Yes. that
Correct,
was-
and for any other name. They called themselves the way. And that's the first thing they were called. Good. Now the letters are going to whom?
The
The
synagogues.
synagogues in Damascus. So it's going to the Jewish people in Damascus, the traditional leaders of the synagogues, giving Saul permission to find people who are followers of the way and arrest them and haul them back to Jerusalem. So they didn't interfere. He's not supposed to tromp on their grounds. It's their turf. But he's going to do it anyway because he has permission now from Jerusalem. Get it? Okay, any question or thought?
I just found it one of the things that bringing them to Jerusalem to be punished. And in my mind, punishing someone for their beliefs realistically doesn't accomplish very much. I mean, it terrifies and intimidates those who are being punished. But in terms of telling people that this is behavior that must be changed. The punishment doesn't really, when you set out to do something, I enjoy this, or I think I'll plant tomatoes, whatever it happens to be. Okay, you're not thinking about what happens if you get caught. You're thinking about, I want tomatoes.
Right. Okay.
And so, in my mind, the whole idea of punishing people as opposed to helping them understand they're mistaken is two different things.
Okay.
And of course, he couldn't prove they were mistaken because they weren't.
Well, he is out to protect the Torah and the traditions. Therefore, it would be obvious that people needed to be punished for violating that Torah. Because if they violate the Torah, then God punishes Israel. They
can lead other people astray. The Torah is very specific. If, heresy was punishable by death.
Right.
Because you had to keep it pure.
So you've got to try to encourage them, and apparently telling them, no, don't do it. Don't believe Jesus is the Messiah. It wasn't working. So they're going to have to try something a little more physical. Okay? And punishment is the next step from they won't do anything to it. Then comes death. So you've got to protect the Torah. So I understand it, and I understand that even in our culture, when a person is told what they should not be doing and they do it anyway, there tends to be a punishment if they continue to do it. That seems to be the only way we know that there's a chance of altering that behavior.
I guess where I was going, though, is we know that when people are persecuted for their beliefs, it tends to spread their beliefs, not reduce it.
They tend to get stronger if their belief is supported.
Yes.
And we realize that now. I don't think they subscribe to that.
They subscribe to, if you're going to do it, we're going to get you. Okay, here we go. In the summer of 32 AD, while Philip was speaking to the Ethiopian eunuch, Saul had been collecting information about Hellenistic followers that had attended the festival of booths, went to religious authorities to get permission to pursue the followers of the way that went to Damascus, Syria, to spread this heresy. What do you think? There's a letter, by the way. It's actually a little scroll.
Makes sense.
Okay? Now, we're not talking, I'm not going through telling you all about the Ethiopian and Philip and all that, but it was at the same time that was happening that Saul is collecting the information about the people who had been at the Festival of Booths and then scattered. He now wants to go after them. So he goes and gets his permission. Oh, I wonder if the authorities were glad to see him go. He's such a troublemaker.
I don't think he was a troublemaker. At that point, they probably appreciated what he was doing.
But he was causing trouble in Jerusalem because of his zeal to protect it. And that would be the trouble with the Romans or the other authorities, not with the Jewish authorities. They would be normally pleased with it. But to have him going around and getting people stoned to death and stuff like this is not going to please the Romans.
Never thought about that.
There we go.
Well, my understanding, a lot of cases, the Romans kind of did a hands-off kind of, if it doesn't hurt me, we're okay.
Yeah, they didn't.
If it looks like it's going to be a riot, that's a different answer.
Totally different. Exactly. So,
but he was a Roman citizen.
That doesn't matter. He's causing trouble in the general society. And I think that would make the Romans upset, and that would bother the religious leaders. And if they could have him do it somewhere else, so much the better. Just a thought.
I've never thought about.
Good. We like to do things you've never thought about. I'll find out. Okay, here we go. While others would pursue the followers of the way in Judea and Samaria, the letters he received allowed Saul to arrest and bring Hellenistic Jews back to Jerusalem for questioning, provided he had the approval of the authorities that ruled Damascus. Damascus is not ruled by the Romans. Okay? Well, actually it was, but it won't be for long. But he still has to get permission of the local governors to do this, and they're going to have this trouble now stirred up in their town. Yeah, it's going to be iffy, but he's got to get their permission as well. Okay? Anything else? Saul immediately gathered some companions for the trip, and now careful, this is picky. Leaving on the morning of Monday, September 23rd, they traveled from about 6 a.m. to noon, took a 2-hour rest during the heat of the day, that part of the day, then traveled from 2 to 6 and covered an average of 30 miles a day. Okay? They expected to arrive in Damascus 130 miles away sometime Friday morning, plenty of time before the Sabbath began on Friday evening. Okay? I'm mapping this out carefully for you. If they're walking 2 to 3 miles per hour, and they walk 8 hours, that's about 16, then becomes about 30 miles a day. You got to take a break during the heat, and you got to eat and stuff like that as well. So I'm guesstimating the timing on this.
Oh, wait a minute. You just said if they're doing 2 miles an hour and 8 hours, that is 16 miles, but that's way far below 30.
But 3 miles per hour for 8 hours is 24, and they might have been up to 30. I'm just using 30 as a general rule.
Okay.
So they could have been on horseback, some of them. They might be walking, who knows?
Walking 30 miles in a day for anybody is a tough day.
It's a tough day. But these are young men,
Yeah.
Who knows? But then it could have been less, but they can't take more than a week to get there because they've got to run into the Sabbath.
Well, actually, you're giving them 10-hour days.
Yes,
10 hours of walking.
At 30 miles, 3 miles is not.
So
I used to do that with a backpack,
Mm-hmm.
50, 60 pound backpack, and I could still do 3 miles.
So 3
an hour.
miles an hour for 10 hours.
There you go. I knew there was the math in here somewhere. Plus the necessary break for lunch and some resting, etc. So, any questions on this? The general idea is they get about 30 miles a day on average, good day, maybe, who knows? Okay? When you walk around town, you get 2 miles an hour. It's easy. That's easy walking.
Yeah. Depends on how steep it is.
Good point. Okay, here we go then. So we know that they're expecting to take about 4 days. Leave on Monday, arrive early Friday. Okay, here we go. Acts 22, 6 through 8.
While I was on my way approaching Damascus about noon, a great light from heaven suddenly shone about me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" I answered, "Who are you, Lord?" Then he said to me, "I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting."
Okay, what does this tell you?
It's pretty dramatic.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is far from what one would ever expect.
Okay.
And the bright light and the voice certainly would get your attention.
Yeah, I would hope so.
And of course, we know his companions saw the light, didn't
We
see
don't
the
know what
voice.
his companion saw yet. We
Well,
haven't, no.
okay.
We're not going to deal with that yet.
Oh.
That's coming.
Okay.
We're looking
Okay.
right at this one now.
Okay.
First of all, he's close to Damascus. So how many days have gone? Probably 3 days already. He's already hiked for 3 days or walked for 3 days. Or approximate. He's close to Damascus. And it's noontime. So it's probably noontime on Friday. Or maybe Thursday. I don't know. But time has passed. Okay? And now let's look at this light. A light suddenly flashed. Was it a poof? Was it an enduring light? Was it like a spotlight? What kind of light was it? I don't know. I only ask you to think about it. It says a bright light suddenly flashed from heaven. So the light's coming from above.
One of the things that we have to recognize still, again, is that he's describing something in human terms.
Yes.
That how do you describe something you haven't seen before?
Right,
You
exactly.
use words you know.
He's doing the best he can here.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's right. That's very good. But all we know is there was bright light, okay, that surrounded him. That's what it says. From heaven all around me.
I mean, it sounds like lightning, but that's just so fast.
And that would be painful.
He didn't fall to the ground. But
That's true.
But when you're talking about a very bright light that's flashing,
That would
you
do
know,
it.
that it's like lightning.
Something, kind of maybe,
You know.
something like that. Or something, who knows. And then a voice. Now this voice is being very specific.
Yeah.
Okay? What does it tell you?
The being knows his name.
Thank you. Wherever this light came from, there's some consciousness that knows exactly who he is and has a message for him. Okay? It's very interesting. Okay? What is the message?
Well, first he asks the question, why are you persecuting me?
Whoa, I'm not persecuting some God that can do light like this. What are you talking about? Who are you? Right? It's got to be it. Okay? And this voice then said to him,
I am Jesus.
Jesus of Nazareth.
Jesus the Nazarene.
Wait a minute, who I am persecuting? I'm not persecuting him. I'm persecuting the people who are followers of him. Wait a minute. Uh-oh. Man, this guy's big news if he can throw a light like this and come back after he's been dead and gone. Uh-oh. This is going to make Saul do some thinking.
I suspect that's the whole intent.
I think that's the whole intent. Let's find out. This is how he reports it. How did Luke report it? In Acts 9, verses 3 through 6.
Now, as he went on his way, he approached Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. And falling to the ground, he heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, Who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But rise and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do.
All right. What has Luke included that Paul here did not include? There's two major things.
Well, let's see. Fell to the ground.
Right.
The voice.
I think the
Fell
instructions.
to the ground is correct, first of all.
Yeah.
Oh,
It-
yeah.
It is up
yeah,
above.
it's
I
up there
apologize.
too.
There's only one thing you need to be aware of. What's the new thing?
So the
Now he
instructions.
He gives
Yes.
some instructions.
He says, okay, here's what you're going to do now. No. Oh, goody. Get up, go into the city, and then you'll be told what to do next. Oh, good. Thank you. Okay? Is there anything surprising here? Is there anything you don't expect? Is there anything that is odd?
Well, if one hadn't read the story, the whole thing I think would be a surprise.
Yeah,
We
okay.
don't real often, at least in the latter times, find men speaking directly to God and getting instructions directly from God.
Yes.
Maybe in a dream or something, but
Okay.
as a general rule, this would be unexpected.
I agree. Okay? And Saul certainly didn't expect this. No. And all of a sudden, smack, hello, wake up, Listen to what's been going on. Pay attention. So all he's doing is getting his attention. Sometimes to get his attention, you got to knock him upside the head first. Hello, wake up. I need you to pay attention. That's a real awakener. This is, lucky Saul. We all
And
like, yeah.
in all these other things, it's like, I'm not giving you any details now. You're going to have to trust me and do as I say.
Heck, I don't like that. But notice, it doesn't talk about how Saul's response, anything. This is just the instructions. Okay? Wake up, slap, slap. Okay? And do this thing. Okay? Now, you're assuming stuff that hasn't been told yet, so we're going to go to that now. Here we go. First of all, the story. On Thursday, September 26th, with 90 miles covered in 3 days, approximately, they got up and were on the road again. This is a picture of the road to Damascus. This is the road built by the Romans. This is the kind of road he would have been traveling on. Okay? About 30 miles outside of Damascus, the road today does this. They traveled for about 5 hours that next day, about noontime, and about 15 miles. So this bend in the road today is about 15 miles outside of Damascus. I just use it to have a location for you. Around this area is approximately where this might have occurred. About 15 miles outside of Damascus. They traveled half the day, about noontime, about to take their break anyway. So it's about at this location that he is awakened. Okay? Anything else, anything of interest here? When suddenly an extremely bright light surrounded Saul like a spotlight. Was this the Shekinah?
Well, so when you think about it, if this was middle of the day, and you have a light that's bright enough to get your attention like that,
Yeah.
it's bright.
It's bright. And it's around him, and with your eyes you can't see anything else. Yeah. But the reason I say that is the Shekinah is what?
The glory of God.
The glory of God. I knew you were. That's why I thought I better volunteer it. Okay? Now, Christ is supposed to return in the glory of God. I'm just saying that. So, but here we go. But that's why he is in this light. Okay? All dropped to the ground, and Saul knew that he had been blinded. That hasn't been mentioned before. Okay? But we're going to find out about that in just a few moments. But a bright like that is going to blind you. Either temporary or permanent. It's going to just do the eyeballs. The retinas are going to go weird. Okay? But what's important is the voice coming out of this bright light. Any question or thought? There was also a loud sound. Okay? That's all I'm saying so far. Here we go now. Acts 9:7.
The men who were traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice, but seeing no one.
What does this tell you?
Well, his companions were pretty startled, to say the least.
I would think
and
so.
they did hear the voice.
I heard a voice. Okay.
But they saw nobody.
Okay. Let's be careful with this translation. Every translation has some bias involved. Okay? Let's go back to the Greek on this one. In the Greek, it translates literally as hearing indeed the sound, but no man seeing.
Okay, so they heard something.
They hear something,
not
but they didn't
necessarily
see anyone.
didn't see
person.
anyone, and they may not have actually heard words.
May not have. It may have been just a sound. They hear a sound, but they see no man. Okay? We're going to take this slowly here. Now, the reason is because the wording is different in each translation because they want you to assume certain things. I don't want you to make those assumptions. Go ahead.
Well, I just was going to say, I read later on in Scripture where Paul was saying that his companions did not hear but saw the light.
Good.
That's the opposite.
Let's go on a little bit. Acts 22:9.
Now those who were with me saw the light, but did not hear the voice of the one who was speaking to me.
So now they're seeing a light but not hearing a voice.
Well, that one
What?
did not
They
understand
didn't
the
understand
voice
the
of.
What did I tell you about translations wanting you to understand it in certain ways? Let's look at the Greek on this one. But the voice they heard not. It's not a matter of understanding. They didn't hear a voice. That's the transliteration from the Greek. Okay?
But in the other Greek, they did hear sound,
Yes,
but they may not have recognized it as a voice. That's different.
there we go. Okay, but we're trying to understand something we don't really know. Okay, so be careful. I'm just having you be careful with this understanding word that triggered me. Okay, okay. They are hearing a sound, seeing no man, but they didn't hear a voice. They heard a sound, but no voice. They didn't see anyone.
Oh, maybe.
Did they see the light? They fell to the ground, didn't they?
Yeah,
Did they?
something brought them down.
Or he did anyway. Does it say they fell to the ground?
I think it did.
I thought it
I
did
think it was
too.
plural.
I don't know, it doesn't say here that the followers did. They stood speechless.
All right, there we go. Let's take a look here.
But even at that, that would be pretty odd.
He fell to the ground in
I
22,
don't know, Saul just dropped.
and he fell to the ground in Acts 9. So he was the one, the voice is going after, and the lights went out. Maybe they didn't get the sense of it. Maybe. I don't really know. But either way, you just have to be careful. That's all I'm saying. Just be careful of how we understand it. Each translation has its way of trying to help you understand their perspective. Okay? Mine is they're hearing no voice, but they're hearing a sound. They don't see a person, therefore there would be no voice. They may not have seen the light. I don't know, it doesn't matter.
Well, realistically, when something extremely odd happens that you witness,
Yeah.
it can cause a lot of confusion.
Yes, it does. And everybody witnesses it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and explains it differently. So I'm just trying to deal with Saul, and how he did it, and how Luke interpreted it. Okay, and then how our modern interpretations go. So all I'm saying is, we know they heard a sound, but not a voice. We know they didn't see a man, and that's all we know. Okay? All right.
Well, what else this tells us, though, is if this were a vision that Paul had, the other people would have had no evidence of it.
None of it. They see him
Yeah.
standing there, all of a sudden he collapses on the ground.
So this means it was something physical as opposed to a vision.
Yes. And that's the way it's being described for us. If suddenly they're going along and all of a sudden Paul just drops to the ground, Saul just drops to the ground, they look at him going, okay, well, is he having a fit? What is this problem? They wouldn't have seen or heard anything.
And he hit his head and dreamed up something. Yeah.
Or it was a vision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But it's not described as a vision. It's described as a physical action. So all we know is they heard a sound of some sort. He dropped to the ground, and that's all they know. For Saul, it's entirely different. It's a humongous bright light with a voice talking to him. Okay? So let's go on. Anything else? Then everyone except Saul got to his feet, assuming they had fallen down also. Saul had heard his name called loudly, "Hello," in order to get his attention. That's all that Christ is doing, is trying to get his attention. He had to get knocked out. He was a very enthusiastic defender of the faith, of the Hebrew faith. He needs to get his attention attracted. Okay, here we go. 1 Corinthians 15:8.
And last of all, as it were to one untimely born, he appeared to me also.
That's it. Very good. Right. So this is the last appearance that he's mentioning of the disciples, of the followers, the many followers. And he's reporting that he also was the last one to get a vision where the Christ appears to him. He may have been referring to this incident here. Acts 9, verses 8 and 9.
Saul rose from the ground, and although his eyes were opened, he saw nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And for 3 days he was without sight, and neither ate nor drank.
Okay, what happened? Tell him. What's the new information we have?
He was blinded.
He was blinded. We didn't know that before.
And for how long? Yeah.
And for how long? Very good. And what did they do with him?
They led him.
Led him by the hand. How else would you do it? You know, you'd have to do it by the hand. Okay? More than that, what else did you see?
He didn't eat or drink.
Didn't eat or drink for 3 days. Now, when you're fasting, it's generally you fast during the daytime, and at night you can then have certainly water.
Right.
Okay, that's typical of fasting. Do you know more about fasting than that?
No.
No.
I mean, generally, water is not included.
Thank
I mean,
you.
well, I know that the Muslims don't have even water during the day.
During the day,
But generally, fasting
right.
is
Food.
just food.
Okay? If you're not consuming liquids like water for 3 days, you're getting dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay? What happens when you're dehydrated? What happens to you?
Get a headache.
Get headaches.
He faint.
There's going to be mental problems.
Yeah.
Okay? That's all I'm saying. I don't know. Certainly food is not an issue. Almost anybody can go 3 days without food if they have to. Water is a whole different ballgame. Of course, maybe he drank wine. Nope, he
Or
didn't drink
maybe
anything.
they didn't drink wine, or, who knows?
So let's now look at the other story from what he says himself. Acts 22, verses 10 and 11.
I asked, "What am I to do, Lord?" And the Lord said to me, "Get up and go to Damascus. There you will be told everything that has been assigned to you to do." Since I could not see because of the brightness of that light, those who were with me took me by the hand and led me to Damascus.
Okay, so what is Saul saying happened to him that Luke did not? Included his own summary. What's different here?
Well, he's getting specific instructions
Yes.
and how he got there.
Okay. What else do you see?
Well, he said he couldn't see because of the brightness of the light, which
Right.
you think snow blindness maybe.
We'll call it blindness for the
Yeah.
moment. Temporary or permanent, didn't matter.
Mhm.
What else is you missing here? What is he to do? It is appointed for him to do.
Oh, yeah, a sign.
See, these are the things that I'm now expecting of you to do. That's what the Christ is telling Saul. You're going to go there, and I'm going to tell you all the things that are expected of you and what I expect you to do. Wow, that's good to know that he's going to at least get some instruction. Okay? But it's what is appointed to him. Okay?
This is his calling.
Thank you. It's his calling. Just as we each have our calling, whether we know it or not, or knew it or not. We all had our calling. Okay, is there anything else here? Okay, here we go. Saul settled down to listen. The Christ had his attention. Then, in a matter-of-fact voice, Saul heard his name again. Saul, why are you, and I'll use my phrase, out to get me? He heard, but his companions only heard a noise. It hurts you to oppose God, the voice said. Okay? Question, thought, or comment?
Well, we didn't get that.
We haven't got that yet. Okay,
That,
that's early. We'll get to that, I'm sorry. That comes, he's the next part of the voice.
There's always kind of a weird thing, huh?
Huh?
What is it? Kick against the,
Yeah,
whatever it was.
right.
Goads.
The goats, yes. It hurts you to oppose God. And that's not what he thought he was doing. He thought he was doing God's will, and it was hurting him. He was so angry at it. And now he's finding out that he's angry because he's doing the opposite of what God really wanted him to do. That's a very difficult thing for him to come to, a decision. This is things that he's going to learn. Who are you? Saul's companion heard him say. But they saw no one but Saul. I am the Jesus of Nazareth, whose followers you are pursuing, said the voice. And I'll overinterpret that a little bit, okay? Saul responded, what do you want of me? That's reasonable. The voice said, I want you to get up and go to Damascus. Think about what you have been doing. You will tell others what you know, and you will open the eyes of the blind so that they may see that I am the Messiah. That's his calling. Any thought, comment, or question?
Well, clearly God picks the times and the events, and clearly he picked the right person for the job, as we will know later.
And the response was appropriate. This was just the right thing at the right time. Okay, excellent. Anything else?
Well, you know, we've talked about predestination or not or whatever. And I've come to feel, I can't say I've come to know because I don't know, but
Okay.
I've come to feel that, as you would say, the answer is yes. I believe that certain people had been chosen from time immemorial to do certain things. I think Scripture supports that. And then there are others, go out and gather as many as you can. And I don't think those were necessarily predestined. That was the choice they had. But you know what I mean? I think.
Oh, I know what you mean. We'll take just a moment on this predetermination thing, okay? The general opinion is that it is predetermined that each individual will or will not go to heaven or will not go to hell. God has already made that choice before your life has been born, been written.
No,
lived.
I'm not saying.
No, I'm saying,
everybody.
I've said some. This is the interpretation.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and that's the general understanding of it. That is, that from the beginning, while you were in the womb, I chose you. You have no choice in the matter. This is what you're going to do. Okay, and that was the basis of predetermination, predestination. Okay, you are predestined to do exactly this one thing. There are issues with that because there is a question of free will. Okay, now that there is a determination that people will come to the Lord and will be saved. That is predetermined. Which ones respond has not been. That allows them the free choice within the determination that some will come. Do you understand the difference?
Okay.
Okay? So when Paul is approached in this way, it is saying, this is what I would like you to do. Are you going to do it? Because Paul could have said no, couldn't he? And that's the free will that we're talking about. He is not predetermined that he must follow this path regardless of all things. But it will be his choice to follow this path that was a path determined in a way. It's a very difficult concept.
But the fact is, Jesus chose someone who was somewhat hard-headed, probably, very learned, and he had been through the other side of the equation.
Yes. Saul was chosen because he was Saul,
Yeah.
the who he was. And he was chosen to take this opportunity to respond.
So he could speak with authority on the subject.
Absolutely. But he could also have refused the call.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the difference I see when you say this determination thing. Okay? I do that with many understandings. I don't want to go into it now. Okay? Any question, thought, or comment beyond that? Very good. Excellent. Here we go. So Saul got up, and his companions led him toward Damascus for another 4 hours, till dusk on Thursday. The road was better than they showed there.
Yeah. He probably still tripped.
He probably walked very carefully and slowed them down, of course. But their speed was greatly reduced because Saul's blindness. And they were only able to cover about 10 miles. That leaves them about 5 miles outside of Damascus. Approximately, sort of, kind of, maybe. Okay? Then on Friday they traveled all day just to cover the remaining 15 miles. I meant 15 miles, sorry. But the last hours of the day. And they arrived in Damascus just before the Sabbath began at 6 p.m. So they made it, despite the difficulties they encountered on the trip. Okay? Any question or thought? In Damascus, Saul's eyes would be opened, and he, as a new person called Paul, would see that Jesus was the Messiah and that Jesus is the living Christ.
Also, one other, maybe it's an aside, but,
Sure.
Well, he is without sight. He wouldn't be able to go in the temple.
That is very true. He was banned. All those are banned from
Yeah.
the temple. Okay, excellent. And next time we get together, Jesus will appear to Paul.